Hello there, dear viewers. This is Greenfast Zachary, and you're watching our special coverage on All 24 News. Tonight, we're diving into a critical and alarming event: gunshots fired at a Donald Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. So here's what happened. Donald Trump was safe, the U.S. Secret Service said on Saturday, after multiple shots rang out at rally by the Republican presidential candidate in Pennsylvania, as video showed Trump grimacing and raising his right hand to his right. The Secret Service has implemented protective measures and the former president is safe, a Secret Service spokesperson said on X, after what the agency called an incident. This is now an active Secret Service investigation, and further information will be released when available. Multiple shots were heard at the outdoor rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, shortly after Trump began his speech. Bodyguards then crowded around Trump as he ducked below the podium, and armed officers took up positions at the front of the stage. Trump repeatedly raised his fist to the crowd and shouted as he was escorted to a vehicle by the U.S. Secret Service. All right, let's bring in our guests. Joining us are two distinguished guests to explore the implications and broader context of this incident. So we have Professor Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean of International Education at California State University from California, and Dr. Michael J Springman, author and political analyst from Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, thank you so much for agreeing to be with us. Let me kick it off with you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi. Can you provide an overview of what happened at the rally according to your following of the news?
One thing is emerging. We are getting information, but it's still fuzzy, contradictory, and in many ways it's driven by the lack of clear reporting. So what happened, according to the report, is that the president, the former president and presidential representative candidate for the Republican Party was shot while he was delivering a speech. He was hurt on his right side face, next to his face, next to his ear, and you could see from the pictures that he went down and then he got up and put in his fist up. And then later on, the Trump administration issued a declaration that the president is fine, is safe, and we are expecting the U.S. President Joe Biden to give an address to the nation shortly. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, we are also start to see narratives that vary from one station to another. CNN appears to be on the usual one, objective in a sense, not wanting to attack Trump for whatever reason, or saying any bad things about Trump. And this is obviously very understood, given the fact that this is America's democracy, is America's life that are at stake. So it's very, very important. So it calls the what's happening in there as what you call it, shooting. On the other hand, when you watch the conservative and particularly Fox News, this is an assassination. You could hear some saying even a political assassination. They are linking it to, some are talking about, how Trump is one of the latest attempt assassination against the leaders in the United States, linking it to Martin Luther King. This is all to give the image that highlight the importance and the historical, from their perspective, role that Trump has done over the recent years. So there is a lot of narrative that is the undertone of the coverage of the news media. But the fact is, the other known fact, according to secret agents, the shooter was killed. There are some reports that saying 2 people were killed. Others will say 1 killed, one injured. The media is now interviewing people who were behind Donald Trump, and they also suggest that there were several shootings. So obviously, Karim, we are in a delicate situation, and we'll wait to see for an account to emerge that could be more accurate than that we are seeing.
Yes, indeed. And what about you, Dr. Michael J. Springman? How did you receive this news?
Well, I was very much surprised. A friend in Florida had texted me asking if I had seen the news, noting that Trump had been shot. And I immediately ran through the news media on my cell phone and found precious little information. I did pick up the idea that Trump rallies, anyone attending has to go through a metal detector. So I'm surprised that someone got a small handgun through. I found it very unusual in Pennsylvania, which is a very strict state on firearms control, that somehow this happened. I am confident as the news finally unspools over the next few days or weeks that the background of the shooter will show information that he had been mentally disturbed, that he had serious problems, that this was well known to people around him, and yet no one ever did anything about it. No one commented that the guy was dangerous. So we will see what will happen over the next few weeks. I find it unusual, of course, that, or maybe not so unusual.
All right. Thank you, Dr. J. Springman. Let's just move on now to the address of Biden about the incident.
Happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that the people who, and we have more detail to come relative to other people maybe injured in the audience. I don't have all that detail. We'll make that available to you. I may be able to come back a little later tonight, but we'll put out a statement if I'm not able to if it's not convenient for you all. But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody. I'll keep you informed, and if I am able to speak to Donald, I'll let you know that as well. But so far, it appears he's doing well, number one. Number two, that there's thoroughly investigating what happened to anyone else in the audience. We have some reports, but not final reports. And every agency in the federal government, I'm going back to my phone to speak with the federal agencies that are being put together again to give me an updated briefing. Has anything happened? They learned any more in the last couple hours. So thank you very much, and I hope I get to speak to them tonight, and I'll get back to you if I do, okay?
Mr. President, do you think there was an assassination attempt?
I don't know enough to, I have an opinion, but I don't have any facts. So I want to make sure we have all the facts before I make any more comments. Thank you.
Are you worried, President, with the security failing
the president stopping short of calling this insane?
All right, that was U.S. President Joe Biden giving a live address after he heard about what happened to former President Donald Trump. Back to you, Professor Hamoud Salhi. Many questions are raised in such incident, like where were security protocols during such incidents? I mean, the challenges there, just the person is kind of baffled. In such an important event, we see gunfire, in such a public rally, and maybe this raises question about the gun control as well.
by several reporters. Some are talking about, as the professor said, that you have a strict security. Rallies are really very well protected. But there are a lot of theories that could emerge from what we've seen. What is interesting is that, as President Biden said in his address, in his press conference, or very brief press conference, investigations are underway, so we know for sure. But there's certainly a lapse in security, and one, could talk about people from within, people who might have, access or have a right to have weapons. But again, even that is questionable. So at this point, really, it's hard to say, except, as you say, they're puzzled. But just a few words, if you don't mind, Karim, on a note on the president's address or his statement, if that's okay.
Yes, Dr. Hamoud Salhi.
One thing you notice is even during this time, there is a bit of sort of formality that we are going to do investigate. President Biden said this, that we have all the agencies and he's waiting for the information. But then the very important question that he raised is violence that continues to be in the United States, and these rallies. We really don't hear a lot of violence at these rallies. They go unnoticed, and particularly areas that are sort of populated by minorities. Violence exists on these rallies, but it's never reported. So one of the things that one should watch for the future is that how these rallies are also reported in terms of security. It's another interesting point about the speech is the fact that President Biden calls Trump Donald, and that appears to be a way of reaching out to the president, to the former president, and perhaps turning a page at this, at least at this critical moment. That speaks highly for the president's character and also what's needed to say at this time.
And I'd like to recall about what Biden called actually during this press conference, the attack. He said that it was really sick. President Biden said there is no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick, he said, and we cannot allow this to happen in the United States, and we cannot condone it. Of course, it comes as a surprise to many who look, onto the United States as a city up on a hill where democracy prevails, where we have this kind of ideal, let's say, city for everybody to follow. But then we see something like this happening. What is your thought about this, Mr. Springman, Dr. Springman?
Well, the issue, I think, with the whole attempted shooting today was that the news media in the United States have been unrelentingly hostile towards Donald Trump, accusing him of being a would-be dictator, an extremist, someone who wants to destroy American democracy and impose his own will on the people of the country, forgetting the Constitution and the basic federal laws and the basic issue of common law. So I think that it's not unusual to see this happening. 7 years ago in 2017, I saw that there were 17,000 calls for Trump's assassination. And certainly Justice Sotomayor, in a comment on the Supreme Court absolving Trump of liability for any official acts, she claimed that he could possibly order the assassination of a rival and get away with it. So I think that, by and large, the greatest attack on security and safety and democracy in the United States has come from the mainstream media, such as the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Los Angeles Times, and, of course, the major television news networks. There are going to be howls for firearms control after this, I believe, even though there's something like 300 million to 400 million firearms in this country, more than the entire population. So I think that if guns were a problem you'd see more problems than the occasional shooting by a deranged person who was most likely known to have serious mental problems, as has been the case in many of these mass shootings at high schools around the country. So I think that we've got to look more closely at this. We've got to find out exactly why Trump is so widely hated, and the fact that we have two octogenarians running for president who are roundly hated by even their own supporters. So I think that the whole situation is a very sordid commentary on the current state of the so-called democracy in the United States.
Perfect. And Dr. J. Springman, what has been the reaction from political figures and the public to this incident, if you've been following closely? I mean, just here we have seen, for example, former President Barack Obama reacting to this and saying that there is no political violence in our country to this. And the response has been overwhelmingly supportive of Trump and the Secret Service. For example, prominent Republicans, including former President George Bush and Senators Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance, expressed relief and commended the swift actions of the law enforcement. Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries also condemned the violence and praised the decisive response. This event has underscored, let's say, Dr. J. Springman, the heightened tensions and the potential for violence in the current political climate. How do you comment about that?
Well, it's kind of a general situation. I think, obviously, the politicians, from local politicians in Pennsylvania to the governor of Pennsylvania to former presidents to Marjorie Taylor Greene in the House of Representatives, have been overwhelmingly supportive. But, of course, they would have to say that. They can't very well call for Trump's assassination and express delight on camera that he was shot at. I think the issue really is more along the lines of the lack of commonality and the divisive nature of what has become American political science and American politics. Politics used to be defined as the art of the possible, but what we now have is divisive politics. We have ethnic identity, we have religious identity, we have sexual identity, as taking more of a important role in the idea of politics in the United States. It's not inclusive anymore, it's exclusive. So I think that what we've got to look at is what has become of America in the last 20 or 30 years. I'm old enough to remember that this didn't happen, that the assassination of John Kennedy was a major shock to the country. And yet politicians now seem to be fair game. There was, in fact, a few years ago, a Republican congressman who was shot and nearly killed at a congressional baseball game in Washington, D.C. So what you've got to look at here, I think, is the changed nature of American politics, which I think is supported by the American news media. The news media promotes divisiveness and sectarianness and works at not being inclusive, but rather, as I noted, at being exclusive.
What about you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi? How did you receive the reactions from political public figures and even from the general public?
So, Karim, we are moving and we are witnessing, in fact, what the doctor is suggesting is well within what is happening in terms of fabrication, in terms of narrative that we're setting up for next. So 1 point or 2 points to consider. Number one is that you have this opportunity that both the Democrats and the Republicans want somehow deeply there rooted in their beliefs, the idea that something good will come out of this, out of Trump, because in all attempted, when you have an attempted assassination on a politician, that politician emerges as a strong leader, very well liked in the public. So the assassination attempts have always been good to politicians. And when you see movies it is always this idea, let's trump something else to get the attention of the public. So there is a huge attention to Donald Trump at this point. Donald Trump, for example, faces serious charges, legal charges. We are Monday, we are a few days away from opening the convention of the Republican Party in Milwaukee. And the vice president the president, my apologies, presidential candidate for the Republican has yet to nominate his vice president. This some Republicans see as against the rule, because usually what they do is that you have to, the practice has been for the Republicans to do it at the beginning, but again, Trump is using it, wanted to do this at a later time, and we still there is that issue there. On the other hand, when you look at the Democrats also have to say the nice things at this point, but they want to say it in a very, very clever way. Certainly, there are animosities between Trump and Biden, but the idea there is that to appear human, to be also very understanding of the situation. But and that's why the statement of the Democratic Party are genuine in the representative, but they also have a political overtone that they don't want for Trump to take benefits from what this tragedy is happening. This is number one. This is the personal. But there is a deeper issue to this, and this is why the doctor talks about guns don't kill people. It's the people that and all this media blaming the media. On the guns, it's a huge American discussion these days, and it's a difference between those who read the Second Amendment of the American Constitution from their own perspective. So it's a serious issue. And what will emerge from this is that the Democrat Party or the advocates of gun control will emerge from this to say, here is another example why we should ban or control the guns.
Yes, and speaking of the guns, Dr. Hamoud Salhi, I mean, as a former president and current, let's say, presumptive presidential nominee for major political party, Trump, I mean, here gets the same kind of protection from the U.S. Secret Service that a sitting president receives. And here, attendees of a Trump rally actually must go through a metal detector and measures similar to airport security. So it remains really unclear how a possible attacker may have been able to bring a gun into the event. And this raises many questions and kind of solidifies the fact that maybe this was staged, I mean, to assassinate the former president.
You know, this is up to a speculation, and certainly there are some reasons that could go from personal. Our doctor says that this person could be deranged, all of that. That is a position that is politically possible, but it could also be a political assassination, because we've seen certainly in recent years people are upset about the policies that the United States is engaged in the Gaza conflict, as an example, at the Mexican borders. There are some serious issues that people are very, very concerned about. And then connected to this is the rise of militias, of groups that are very extremist. And the studies show that there is a huge argument today, or evidence that show that extremism has gone to a different level, that both sides, that the left and the right, the conservative and the liberals by American standards, are also exercising extreme violence, and there is no this idea of getting to the middle. And let me just make a very, very historical point, so we don't leave the discussion with seeing violence as also part of this American system that is not grown systematically. If you go back and use one indicator how Congress operated, under Congress prior to mid-90s, there was a program that we called training freshmen, fresh elected officials. And the idea at the time, very briefly, Kareem, is that when you're elected for the first time to Congress, you are put in a training to understand how to use the congressional rules. And it's like a sort of a parliamentarian lessons how to handle yourself about anything in the Congress. And both Republicans and Democrats will sit together and learn together. So through this, the Democrats and Republicans, they used to have gatherings after congressional sessions. There were meetings where senators and Democrats from both sides get together. But guess what happened? Newt Gingrich in mid-90s get to a conservative. The Republican issues the Republican contract, and they stop these interactions between Democrats and Republicans at this level, seeing it as it's no longer we are together, it's one against each other. This affected the level of accommodation, the effectiveness of of Congress. And one of the biggest impact of this is that what we've seen in the rise of violence in American politics, in American lives, and the Congress is still divided, pushing sides differently, and has yet to achieve an accommodation that will benefit the American people, that will sort of reach a solution where people could go to rallies like this and live safely and nobody's hurt.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Hamoud Salhi. Let me bring back Dr. Michael J. Springman. The incident has reignited discussions on political violence and security. And here I want to know your opinion about the broader implications for the upcoming elections and mainly for Donald Trump.
Well, that's a very good question. I would say in this case that there are some things that have not been examined to date. For example, another candidate for president, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has been denied Secret Service protection, even though he is a candidate, and his father and his uncle were assassinated. So I think that there is very selective application of presidential security for aspirants to the highest office in the country. But nobody seems to pay a whole lot of attention to this because Robert Kennedy has been hostile towards vaccinations and the COVID virus and Dr. Fauci and a few other things. But somehow he doesn't warrant protection. I think that you can have all the protection you want in the world and it doesn't work. Look at Carrero Blanco, who was blown 3 stories in the air by a charge placed in the street. Certainly there's plenty of security there at the time. You can look at other assassination attempts, and basically you cannot be protected 100% of the time from someone determined and bound to kill you and is willing to sacrifice his own life in the process. There is a limit to what you can do. You can see the Secret Service in these films surrounding Trump, preventing anyone from taking a second shot, but they had great difficulty getting him into the car away from the crowd. And you had plenty of armed men with bulletproof vests, semi-automatic or fully automatic rifles, I can't tell, wearing helmets. And yet somehow someone did take a shot at Trump, and someone managed to shoot at least one other person, killing one and presumably injuring another. So if you're going to be out in public and not in a bunker somewhere, you're out there to be assassinated. And the idea is to change the idea of the body politic and convince people that violence is not the way you get your political views across. There's one thing to have a demonstration in the street. There's another to have a demonstration with a deadly weapon of some kind or another. So I think that you can protect and protect and protect, but what you've got to do is protect the actual concept of what America is. America is more a state of mind than it is a nationally organized, homogeneous country like perhaps France or maybe Algeria or, say, Germany or Italy. So therefore, I think that you've got to look at politics and the idea of the people and what they think politics ought to be, rather than concentrate on protection.
And Dr. Hamoud Salhi, let's just speculate here and just tag along on what is being said. Say this was an assassination attempt, and seeing what was actually happening, I mean the campaign of tarnishing Donald Trump's image, the trials that we have seen. Simple question, why does Donald Trump bother so much?
Well, you actually are reading or hearing an example of what's going on in the United States today. Dr. Brian Jenkins, for example, appears, from what I'm hearing today, as supporting one side of the American government or American politics today. That he appears to be leaning or on the same side as what the conservative Trumpian people would argue. That there's nothing wrong with that. But as I mentioned earlier, when you look at the projection of American politics, and particularly when you go back to the 80s and look at how the debates between conservative and liberals were handled, they were handled with highly sophisticated argument. For a democracy to be successful, it is understood it has to have two parts or three parts or many. So the conservative and liberals, you would understand, you would leave with the impression of strong arguments about the role of government, the right to protection. All of these issues were handled very objectively. But we began to see, and again here there is a difference in opinion, to see a decline in this kind of reasoning. And it began with the speaker, the former speaker of House of Representatives in the 1990s. Newt Gingrich, a conservative who led what appears to be the result of those efforts, that America is becoming more divisive and so on and so forth. Another example to note, for example, we see, and it bothers me so much because as a faculty member or someone who is with the students, we can't no longer tell our students that if you're honest, that ethics matter, you don't lie in matters in running for government. Today, when we look at how the media presents, and I'm saying this on both sides, don't get me wrong, it's not just Fox News or others, it's on both sides. There is a problem in the United States. You can tell an American student today who wants to be a politician to be ethical and you'll be successful. A record that we've seen of legal cases against Trump speaks volume about the nature of this, where we are at this point. So it's a sad fact that we are shifting away from the truth and what needs to be addressed. The issue, for example, of Kennedy, Robert, what the doctor didn't tell you is that the case was presented to the Homeland Security. There are rules for how to get security, and he based his case on threats against his life. And what the Homeland Security said basically is that there are not enough evidence, but it continues in the court. So there is nothing wrong to clarify or to make note of what's actually happening. But we are come to, you read what you need to read. You could either say the glass is half full or half empty. So, so it is for that matter when it comes to portraying this as an assassination. It could be the case, but regardless of the causes, this is a human tragedy, and it is most likely, if we follow the pattern of the past, even at this point, when you hear the supporters of Trump, they see this as another example against Trump, and this is an example, a clear evidence that this guy is a great guy, and he's threatened by the so-called groups who stole the elections in 2020. I mean, these are really when Fox News uses political assassination, it is designed to give this political sort of meaning for linking it to what's happening today, and that's really where the debate is today. That's what we're hearing.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Michael J Springman, do you agree here? Do you see that maybe this event that was marked as tragic actually will shape the narrative around Trump's campaign in a positive way, and maybe his portrayal in the media is going to give him that kind of spotlight he needs to win the election?
Yes, I would say that you are correct that this attempted assassination will give Trump a big bump in support Certainly after he was found guilty of various felonies regarding bribing a porn star, for example, he received a overwhelming flood of money. So I think this would be a logical outcome. I've seen comments briefly on some of the news media sandwiching their coverage, noting that Trump's support seems to be growing and that they fully expected an outpouring of sympathy and political backing for him. I would agree with Dr. Salahi there that we've got a degradation in American political thought, in American political analysis. It comes down to a couple of trendy sound bites in 10 seconds or 15 seconds. There is no clear analysis. There is no clear intelligence in any of the candidates for the past few election cycles. Basically, nobody talks like an adult who's been to educated at a university and has something to say. It's basically what sounds good, what plays good to the mass media, and just winning the next election is the most important goal that any politician in the country has in mind.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see the, let's say, stat controversy regarding the latest mistakes and bloopers of President Joe Biden when he mistakenly called Volodymyr Zelensky as Putin, and of course former incident when he referred to the Egyptian president as the president of Mexico, and so many of these incidents in comparison to, I mean, Donald Trump, who is still there, standing, speaking with evidence and facts, trying to defend USA, and still with the same slogan, America First. How do you see the chances of Joe Biden here winning the election against Donald Trump?
In my view, Joe Biden's chance to win the election against Trump is slim and none. His performance at the so-called debate was appalling. The man just simply did not appear to be there in person. He was somewhere else. When he did the carefully cultivated question and answer session with the press through pre-selected journalists and probably pre-selected questions, he still didn't look good. The man is past it. There is something wrong with him, seriously wrong with him. He is more of a puppet, an animatronic figure than anything else. And given the number of people in the Democratic Party in the United States, given the number of people who want a third party or a fourth party or a real party, I think it's appalling that we have two octogenarians running for election against each other. One, Biden is simply out of it. There is something wrong with his mind, something wrong with his body. And as far as Donald Trump goes, he has done badly in the past during his 4 years in office, and that he surrounded himself with incompetent people. A first-rate man surrounds himself with good first-rate men. A second-rate man picks second, third, fourth, and fifth-rate people around him. And that's what Donald Trump did. And I don't expect he's going to improve the next time around. Mm-hmm. So I think that our chances for having a decent leadership in this country are just about nil.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Hamoud Salhi, do you agree? Is the USA in trouble now that we don't have a fit leader, apparently?
We don't have what, Karim?
I said we don't have, apparently, a fit leader.
Well, it's an opinion. And seriously, I could tell you, I just got back from a week-long lecture in Argentina at one university, Santa Fe Católica in northern Buenos Aires. And the topic was American foreign policy and the presidential elections. Frankly, my students, a large number of them, were interested in the debate, what happened. But yeah, they took it for granted. You know, the man is sick and... but what about the issues? So I wonder whether the world care that much. But in the United States, it really poses a very, very serious question. I agree with Dr. Brian Springman, your guest today, in that President Biden has a slim chance, and then he added none. I would say some. And here is the argument. It's a certain degree you have, or for the fact is that this Democratic Party has a serious problem. A problem between a huge divide between the young generation, a party that is increasingly becoming inclusive of minorities, young people, but its leadership is not representative. It's an older representation. But when you look, at the voting patterns, how Americans vote, who are the most likely to vote, a large number of the voters are senior citizens, people who are in the retirement age. So when these people look at Trump, look at Biden and the gaps that he makes, they understood it, they connect with it. But they have parents who are in the 81 years or at the same age. They connect, they relate with him. So they most likely will look at the performance that this president has, all of that. So for them, this is it could be a good fit, and they will go and vote. The challenge for the Republicans is that they have a strong base, and they need everybody to vote. So that's why if it's a low turnout on the Democratic Party, the Republicans are more likely to vote. But then there is other thing that we've seen. There is a crisis of leadership in the United States, particularly on the Democratic side. And then there is also a shift in American president. We no longer have these strong leaders who are charismatic, who speak about dignity, ethics, all the wonderful things, type like Martin Luther King, Roosevelt, Kennedy, and Reagan. We no longer have those leaders. We have managers. You have a businessman in Trump who runs, who had big business conglomerates, and he knows how to manage the media. When you describe him, he's an entertainer. He looks for how to get attention to himself and only himself. And we wonder how this will turn out. You have even, leaders who are known for their policy. I was really very surprised at the kind of terms that President Biden used during the debate. The terms that, it's not presidential, but it's the language of these days. You have to use the Trumpian language. You can accuse people. You can do naming. The idea of decency, honesty, all of that in American politics, and a strong leadership is overtaken by political calculation, fundraising, and money. People contribute to Trump funds. They give him money, but the vast majority of that money goes to his payment of his legal fees. And those who give him justify this as a poor man. We have to support him, pay his legal fees. It's astonishing. And you're right, on many levels, we have a serious problem of the fit to represent this country. And sadly enough, when you look at these two leaders, I think Americans should demand more of their leaders than these two personalities.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Hamoud Salhi. And Dr. Michael J Springman, any final thought?
No, I would say that Professor Salhi's remarks about the degradation of American politics and political thought is on the mark. You've got to look at the idea that these people don't act like adults anymore. You can kind of see it reflected in the movies from, say, the 30s and 40s, where people were proper and thought and said and acted like normal adults would do. And yet you look at pictures today and you've got people who are essentially performing like foul-mouthed children. You've got a situation like Alec Baldwin, the wretched actor, who murdered the cinematographer in the film Rust, and he's walked free of charges, even though the prosecution had videos of him acting remarkably irresponsibly with a firearm. And he's a man that hates firearms. So I think that you've got to look at the laws of intelligence, the laws of education, the inability to act like sensible adults anymore. And Professor Salhi was right on the mark on that.
Thank you so much, Dr. J Springman, for being with us, and Professor Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean of International Education at California State University. Thank you so much again for agreeing to be with us, and thank you, dear viewers, for keeping it here on our channel, on our special coverage. More to follow on other news bulletins. Thank you so much, and take care.